What's up, y'all? Talkin Dawgs. I guess we'll talk about the dogs. The show must go on. Unfortunately, the show must go on for 10 more weeks when it comes to Mississippi State football. It's in a bad place right now, folks. I don't even want to sugarcoat it. I don't have to tell you anything. You guys can see for yourself just kind of where Mississippi State is right now as a football program, and it's not a good place. And it's not going to get any better this year at all. I don't think there's anything Mississippi State can do with this current team that's going to make the situation much better. And the reason I believe that is because the schedule is just so brutal moving forward. I don't know how it could. Texas, Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Arkansas is much better. Missouri, Ole Miss. 7 of your next 8 games are against teams that are inside the top 25. 6 of them against teams inside the top 25. Another one in Arkansas. If they win this weekend, they might be in the top 25, which would drop A&M out. So I guess that would, kind of nix that. But the one team that you felt like preseason out of this grouping that you could beat was Arkansas, who just went on the road and beat Auburn. And this looks like a much more improved Arkansas team with offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino on it. It is going to get really, really bad in Starkville the rest of this year. And I think the reason I continue to say that is because I just want everybody to be prepared, because with each passing day, when people see what Ole Miss is doing, when people see how bad Mississippi State is, the injuries, things like that, each passing day, people are getting more and more upset. Well, it's nowhere close to being done for Mississippi State. It starts this weekend. They got to go to Texas, the number 1 team in the country, a team whose backup quarterback, they lost their quarterback. Their backup is a Manning, was a 5-star recruit, and has looked really freaking good in the first 2 games he's played in. So considering, the dudes that they have there at Texas, the talent that they've assembled. They're rolling with Steve Sarkisian, as he's been there now for a few years, and he's kind of built this thing up for them. It's impossible to expect Mississippi State to go in there and be just competitive after what we've seen the last few weeks. And I don't say that to be negative about this team or to, just give up on them in this game, but I don't know how you can watch what we've watched since the Arizona State game and say Mississippi State has a good chance to stay in this ball game. Anything can happen. Texas can be having a really bad day, and State can play out of their mind, and State can stay in that ball game for 3 quarters. But it's just hard to expect that at this point in time when it comes to Mississippi State. And it's just getting to the point where it's just wearing on everybody, and we're only 4 games into the season. You're kind of counting down the days to basketball season. And to Hunter's point in the chat over here, what point do you and Brian just move to basketball? I wish we could do that. Unfortunately, we got to go to the rest of these home games. I won't be going on the road much. I don't go on the road much anyway because of my obligations on Friday night. But, I contemplated going to Tennessee and Georgia maybe just because they're manageable drives. I will be at the Egg Bowl. I don't usually miss the Egg Bowl regardless. I will be at that. But it's just like, why would I'm going to have to spend money out of my own pocket. It's kind of like the fans' perspective. You guys have to go buy a hotel plus tickets to the game. Why would I go spend that time with you guys don't care if I'm there or not anyways. So it's just a very tough time to be a Mississippi State fan and to cover Mississippi State athletics. I've covered some rough teams. I've covered some rough seasons in different sports, but this is kind of taking the cake right now. I think this is going to go down as one of the worst seasons that Mississippi State's had, at least in the last 40 years. And it's going to be pushing, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be pushing one of the worst seasons. So I'm really interested to see how this plays out because, as we know, Blake Shapen is out for the season now with a shoulder injury. I've seen some people indicate that he's faking it or he's given up on the team, and that couldn't be further from the truth. The guy wants to be out there with his teammates. Jeff Lebby talked about it this morning. He was at the facilities this morning when Jeff Lebby got there getting treatment. He was in meetings with the quarterbacks today. He's in a sling. He's with his teammates, and they are pushing. They're going to push for another year. They feel confident they're going to get another year. In a lot of ways, that I think that's a good thing for Mississippi State, that you can go in the offseason and you don't have to look for a transfer portal quarterback if you don't want to. Some people might argue that Shapen isn't the guy. I don't. I'm not going to besmirch you on that. I think there's definitely some better quarterbacks that you could possibly get out there, but getting a guy with that kind of experience that has the abilities that he does, I can't look at a lot of what Shapen's done in the first 4 games and say he's not a guy capable of running this offense and being a good quarterback in this offense. Almost 1,000 yards so far. I thought he was having one of his best games on Saturday before he got injured. The big question with him is whether or not he's going to be able to stay healthy, and that's the question we've posed since he arrived at Mississippi State. So with that said, if you go into the offseason and you don't see what you want to see out of Michael Van Buren or Chris Parson here in the next 8 ball games, then yes, I think you go after another transfer portal quarterback. But if you feel good about your quarterback situation, you have a Michael Van Buren who, say he kind of sparks Mississippi State a little bit. He's performing pretty well as a true freshman. And then, you go into the offseason, you have that quarterback competition between he and Blake Shapen. You're in great shape at that position, and you're able to spend the money that you might spend on a quarterback, because if you want a good quarterback now, you're talking about over $1 million in NIL money that you're going to have to get out of the transfer portal. So if you could possibly get through this and you have Blake Shapen coming back and you have Michael Van Buren going into year 2 that has made a big leap and they're having a serious quarterback competition between them, I think that you're better served going out there and trying to find defensive and offensive linemen, linebackers, guys that are going to help you win games, maybe a running back, a legit running back. If you're able to save that money and you have experience and competition at quarterback, it's a win-win for Mississippi State, and this actually is kind of a blessing in disguise. And I hate to speak that way because Blake Shapen's going through a very difficult time right now. He wants to be out on the field. This is going to be a tough rehab for him, and he doesn't want to be injured. You don't want your quarterback injured. But if you're looking for a silver lining there, if Mississippi State can come out of this with a healthy Blake Shapen that's back next year for another season, he's going to be hungrier than ever. The competition level is going to go up because of Michael Van Buren. On top of that, and possibly Chris Parson, whichever, I think that you're in much better shape. You're in better shape than you were this year. So it could end up being a good thing for Mississippi State. But best wishes to Blake. Just an excellent guy. Has been nothing short of amazing as far as being a teammate, a hard worker, has come in from day one, has worked his butt off, has led that room, has been the unquestioned leader of the room and unquestioned starter for Mississippi State. There was never a question he was going to be the guy. I hate that this has happened for him. He's done nothing wrong. He played his guts out early on in the season. Just bad luck here. So I'm wishing the best for him. Thoughts out to his family. This is probably a difficult time for them too. So, if you're a fan out there, and I haven't seen anybody in here, but if you're a fan out there that's saying he's quitting on the team, he's not tough, not good, whatever, take a step back and show some grace to this guy, man. He didn't sign up for this, and he's done nothing wrong. And to me, I don't think from the play on the field that he's done anything wrong. You can look back at a few plays here and there that he could have done better, but he's done a pretty darn good job running this offense. And it's just a sucky situation for Mississippi State. But now the attention is turned to Michael Van Buren, and the true freshman is going to get his opportunity. I thought he performed really well considering the circumstances the other day. It was not his first time on the field, but It kind of was, because the first time on the field against Eastern Kentucky, he's just handing the ball off. He didn't throw any passes in that game. He came out the other day in a situation where the team's down by 14 points, or it might have gotten up to 17 at that point. I can't remember exactly the possession he came in, but he came in the fourth quarter. The game's still kind of within reach. I mean, nobody felt confident Mississippi State was going to win the game, but it's not like it was a 35-point ball game. State was down by a couple of touchdowns. Manufactured a scoring drive. Give him another 30 seconds, he probably would have got a scoring drive there at the end of the game too. They just kind of ran out of time, but I mean that falls on them a little bit too. But he got them inside the 5 for a second chance for a touchdown. 7 of 13 passing, 100 yards in the ball game. Scrambled a little bit too. To me, I look at Michael Van Buren and I see a guy that is probably more what Jeff Lebby's looking for in a quarterback. And that's no shot at Chris Parson. Just from a skill set standpoint and kind of what he does there offensively, I feel like Van Buren is Jeff Lebby's guy. And I don't think he's picking sides just because Parson was a guy that he came in. He's seen both of those players play now from spring all the way into this point. And he talked about just the consistency that Van Buren's had and how he, runs the offense. He just feels better about it right now. But we will see Parson too on Saturday, so we can't quite call it yet on who is the guy capable of running this offense for Mississippi State. I think we will see a little bit of Chris Parson on Saturday too. I don't know how Jeff Lebby will do that. I imagine he will give the ball to Michael Van Buren and let him roll. And if he struggles a little bit, he might switch it up. You might see Chris Parson. If the thing gets really out of hand, we might see Chris Parson as well. But it's going to be Van Buren's ball to start the ball game. And just like Chris Parson was kind of thrown to the fire last year at Texas A&M getting his first start, this is going to be tough. I mean, that was a Texas A&M team that fired their coach the next day. This is a Texas team that is number 1 in the country, a pick by a lot of people to win the national championship. This is a totally different animal for Michael Van Buren to step into this position. So it's going to be tough. We're going to find out what the kid's made of. Just like Chris Parson last year, you cannot judge Michael Van Buren as a finished product just from what you see in this game. If he comes out and he throws a few interceptions like Parson did last year, it's not over for him. He's still got a long way to go. But I think conversely, if you see some really good things in this game, I think you can take away a lot from that. If a true freshman is able to go to Darrell Royal Stadium against the number 1 team in the country and is able to put up, over 200 yards, maybe throw a couple of passing touchdowns, do some really good things, I think you can be really excited about the future. And at that point, I think just let the reins off of some of these younger guys, let them go. I think this is the most important thing you can take away from this season, if it's a positive, is that you allow some of the younger guys to get in there, cut their teeth, and let them roll and get them ready for next year, because next year is still part of this rebuild. I mean, Mississippi State's still going to be in this next year. You're playing virtually the same schedule with a couple other teams in the mix. It's not going to be an easy schedule next year either. So, times are going to continue to be tough for Mississippi State. I think this is going to be a tough rebuild for Jeff Lebby. But if you can find some positives out of this year, guys like Michael Van Buren could be it. And this could be the start of that. And hopefully you can keep him healthy, and you can have him learn a lot from this game. He can keep his head in the game. He can learn from mistakes, stuff like that. But I do know that Jeff Lebby absolutely loves this kid, trusts him to the ends of the earth, and feels like he's the future at Mississippi State. But unfortunately for State, the future's now, and he's going to have to grow up quickly this week. So having said all that, we're not even going to really dig into the Florida game. It's kind of like the Toledo game, and we've said enough about it at this point. There's just not a ton to take away from it other than what we've seen. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it here in this chat as well. So we'll get into that now. We'll start with Jay Edwards. For reasons of player safety, any chance forfeit rest of the games on the schedule. Seriously, if there's literally almost zero chance of winning or even competing, you still got to play the games, man. I mean, you got to fight through this. The guys have still got to progress. They still got to learn. This will be a good learning experience for a lot of players and coaches to try to find a way to get out of it. Can't make excuses. Just got to play these games. I mean, State did this in 2020. They had 43 players available. Under normal circumstances, they wouldn't even played that game against Georgia in 2020. They went on the field and they competed their butt off, and they were in that ball game in the fourth quarter with a true freshman quarterback, Will Rogers. So you never know. You never know what can come from games like this. Titans Fan Central, has anyone pressured Selman about the lighting and speakers at Davis Wade? It's almost disrespectful to the fans at this point. Revenue sharing is a lame excuse. Yes, I've talked to them several times about it. They're not going to do these lights, I don't think, this year. It's just they're not going to do it. That's one battle that I'm not going to win. It doesn't appear like we're going to win that battle. The people that want it. So you just got to let it play out. Selman does not want to go ahead and do that project. It's a fairly expensive project because of the structure that Mississippi State has on their stadium, the lighting structure. They're going to have to get, I think, entirely new steel out there. I mean, it's just the structure, the lights, and all that alone, I think it's over $10 million. And then when you talk about the speakers and stuff, it just adds up. I think it was over $20 million what that entire project is going to cost. And in my opinion, they need to get that stuff fixed. It's unbearable. The speaker system right now it's pathetic that Mississippi State's in this position that they're an SEC school and have that kind of speaker system. The lights, we can argue back and forth on that. I think that they've needed these lights for a long time just to add. If you look around the country and you see the teams that are using these lights for the experience, it just adds a different element that just makes your stadium, your atmosphere cool. That part, I can understand if somebody doesn't want the lights. The speaker system is ridiculous. Mississippi State should not still be in the position where you are sitting anywhere in the stadium and you can't hear what's going on. And then in other sections, it's entirely too loud. So Mississippi State's speaker system is embarrassing. It goes along with a lot of game day things that people are complaining about right now. And it's just for the administration that the people that might say this is just petty that you're talking about this. It's just part of it. When you're losing games, everything gets magnified like this. Now, the speakers we've been complaining about for a long time, but when you're losing football games, you can't get away with trash being on the ground, TVs not working, the lines to the stadium being too long, whatever. I don't know what all the complaints are at this point. I think the lines have drastically improved over the years, but the little stuff at the stadium is only going to be magnified when you're losing ball games. And Mississippi State is dreadful right now. So every little thing, somebody posted a picture of the men's room where it's labeled men. The N was like wrong side out or something. And, that's a little petty, but it's a little thing that like, how is that not taken care of? How is, trash being left in the stands? How are TVs not working for several years? Things like that, just taking pride in the atmosphere and the university, things of that nature. A lot of that's lacking right now, and Mississippi State's got to get a hold of it. And that's why people continue to complain about these speakers and lights, because now it's gotten to the point where it feels like people just are just not going to listen to the fans. And I totally get that side of things, but I'm just explaining to you why the administration doesn't feel like it's important right now. And you can argue that too. I mean, if they are legitimately going to put that money into revenue sharing, and Mississippi State has, an extra 20 million or whatever that they can put towards athletes, and they can go out there and get better athletes. If they are indeed going to do that, I will sign up for that today. If that gets Mississippi State better players that they can put on the field and make the product better, I would sign up for that. If nothing comes from that, if you don't get better players or you're not putting that towards the student athletes, um, then it's just being lied to, and you can pick whatever side. I'm choosing to believe that it's going to revenue sharing and things like that. I've talked to enough people. Mississippi State's very adamant that they don't want to spend that kind of money right now on facility upgrades, and that's fine. If it's going to go to players, if you're going to get better players out of this, and then your product gets better, then you can go back and do all that. Do it, but it needs to be done that way. You need to back up what you're saying right there, and if that's the case, I think that fans will be more happy about the product on the field than lights and speakers. But the reason that is coming up right now is because the product is so bad. Because let's be honest, if they had an LED light show in the second half of the Toledo game when they're down 35-10 or whatever it was, I think everybody would be ticked that was happening and Mississippi State's getting killed by Toledo. So the LED lights, whatever. The speaker system, it drastically needs to be fixed. Also from Titans Fan Central, how many SEC games do you think basketball will win this season? I'm bumping up my expectations for this team. 9 or 10 wins at least, I think this team is capable of. I'm really excited about this team. I don't think they're being talked about enough. I think it's going to be a really good team, well balanced. The big question for me is the center position and what they do there, what kind of production they get. I think the guards are going to be far more productive this year than they were last year, and that's going to help. 1 through 3 is going to be really productive, and then maybe you can get a lot out of Keyshawn Murphy in the post too. But what are you going to get from your fives? And you have a couple of guys there that just transferred in that haven't really proven a whole lot from a scoring standpoint. So you lost a big productive piece in Tolu Smith from a scoring standpoint. So what are you going to get there? If you get really good defense, rim protecting standouts like Famana and Nwoko, if those guys can protect the rim, rebound, things like that, I think that people will be happy with the product. If those guys aren't doing that, I don't think they're going to be a 15 point per game scorer. I think you're going to need your centers to be rebounders, shot blockers, guys that can put the ball back and give you just a little bit in the post. I don't think they have to be 20 point per game scorers, but can they rebound, defend, and put it back, score inside every now and then when needed, just to take a little bit of pressure off the other 3 or 4 players. That's my question. If they do that, this is going to be a scary good team. I think they're going to defend, and they're going to be able to shoot the ball better than they have the first 2 years under Chris Jans. It's going to be a well-coached team. I think it's going to be fairly deep too. Dogs 03, Chris Parsons is likely going to end up in the portal, you'd think, after the season. If Michael Van Buren is unquestionably the guy as the backup or competing with Blake Shapen, 1A, 1B, whatever happens, if that happens, then yes, I think it wouldn't shock me to see Parson enter the portal. I haven't heard anything from that side of things. I don't think he's considering it right now. I haven't heard anything from anybody about that. But that's just the nature of it right now. That's just how the game is being played. Guys aren't getting playing time after a couple years at quarterback. They're going to hit the portal more than likely. So we'll see what happens. But I'm not going to count Chris out just yet either. We're going to get a chance to see him play probably Saturday. He's going to have his opportunity to get in there and help out. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a little premature to put him in the portal just yet. But just saying, if it's Van Buren versus Shapen or whatever happens after the year, then I think that probably would transpire that way. Justin Tidwell, how long do you think it would take Levy to turn this thing around? 2 seasons? I think that's fair. After 2 years, he should be really moving in the right direction. This year is going to be a disaster. Next year, it appears that you're going to have to be able to just do what we thought they could do this year and be competitive in games and win, like spring an upset or two, just show that improvement. The next year might be the year that we hoped this one would be, where they're fighting for bowl eligibility. I don't know. The schedule is going to be very difficult, so it's hard to imagine. They're going to have Texas again, Georgia, Tennessee. Oh boy, it's going to be tough again next year. But year 3 is kind of like the get in or get out deal, and next year you need to be showing a ton of improvement too. It really just depends on what they can get out of the transfer portal, how quickly they can rebuild this roster. They're going to have to make some major coaching changes on this staff. I just don't think that defensive staff is you can't run it back. I don't think there's any way around that. So there's going to have to be a lot of changes, and you're going to have to show some major improvement next year. Tom T, how much of the running game against UF can be attributed to us getting better or to them being pretty bad? I think it's both. Florida has one of the worst run defenses in the league. It's probably second to Mississippi State's. So they're not good, but that's a talented group. Mississippi State showed improvement. State struggled to run it against Toledo and Arizona State. I think Florida is better than Toledo up front, and they have better players than Arizona State. So I think that you can certainly find some positives for Mississippi State to have their best running game that they've had all year. That looked like more like what Jeff Levy wanted. Unfortunately, the guy that was running the hardest, that finally was having his best game, Kevon Lee, it looks like he's going to be out for a while. And I don't know how long that's going to be. I don't know what his injury is. Jeff Levy gave us no clarity on that. I imagine Wednesday night when we get the injury report, it will say he's out for the game. So that's a brutal loss. Right now, State is sitting there with 2 scholarship running backs available, and that's if you have Gayton being out right now puts them at 2. They have Devon Booth and Johnny Daniels. Yeah. So if Gayton can come back, that's your number 3 guy. You have to pull the red shirt off of him now. So because you can't go with just 2 scholarship running backs, you got to have 3 of them. So and Gayton needs to be in there. You were going to lose Kevon Lee after the season anyway, along with Jeffrey Pittman, who's apparently gone, and Devon Booth. So you're looking at now, you got to get Gayton some playing time to get him ready for next year. So hopefully he gets back soon. I don't know what his situation is either. He ended up on the injury report last week and was out for the game, and that was early in the week he was out. So that wasn't even like a questionable or doubtful. So you need him back for sure. Hunter Johnson, I know you don't take a lot out of baseball scrimmages, and it's only the first one. We hit 7 home runs today, and Pico didn't look great. Does that say more about our offense or about pitching? We go through this every year. I mean, last year State's pitching looked terrible in the scrimmage. They had some good moments another year where they were really bad. It's just that I don't take a single thing out of baseball scrimmages. I don't even give people the impression that I go to them because I just don't think that they're super important right now. They're glorified practices. Chris Lamonis puts them in certain situations. They'll have like a 1-2 count or a 3-1 count where they have to get, throw a pitch in there for a strike. There's just so many things that happen situationally in those. I don't think you can take anything away from the numbers, but there will be a lot taken away from them, I promise. When those numbers come out, people will make a lot of them, and it's just not that important. But I get Mississippi State fans are really um, excited about these scrimmages. I get it. I know this fan base is passionate about baseball. I am too. I don't think they're the telltale signs. Anthony Frederick, more than likely Parson will be gone. Have you watched Camario Taylor play? Will he be ready year one? No, I don't know if he'll be ready year one. You don't want him. You don't want him in there year one, and he's probably going to be State's third string at best, just right off the bat, just because he's a high school guy, and you're going to have what was Shapen? Is Shapen a sixth year? He's a fifth or sixth year guy, plus Michael Van Buren, who is a year ahead of Camario. I don't think he's going to be ready right away, but I think his future is really, really bright. I saw him earlier this year against Starkville. I've seen him 3 or 4 games during his career, and big time arm, live arm, pretty ball, throws some nice touch too. He has really grown as a quarterback. He's going to be good. He's going to be a really good one, and he can move around in the pocket if you need him to scramble, things like that. He's going to be a good one. I just don't think that you throw him in there right away, and I don't expectations to be brought down a little bit on him just on when he's going to make his impact. Bryce Hall says, for everyone not going to the game, go ahead and send that money you'd spend at the game to the Bulldog Initiative. Not a terrible idea. I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody how to spend their money, especially when I'm not spending it on the initiative because, I work here. So, I'm not going to spend money on that anyways, but not a bad idea. It's such a catch-22, and we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, but we're having to, Mississippi State is having to basically ask you to pay for tickets, hotel, all that's junk, plus NIL. And that's tough. And Bulldog Club, you got to pay Bulldog Club fees. It's tough to ask that, but it's essential. Mississippi State is not going to get out of this without the fan base. And it's tough to preach to the fans, you have to do this when the product is so bad. But it's kind of one of those deals like, you have to do this or Mississippi State is in a lot of trouble and this is not going to get any better. So it's hard for me to tell anybody to do anything, but especially coming to games, like I cannot expect people to sign up for that. I just can't. It's just I thought that the student section was great, especially the first 2 home games. They were out of there by halftime the other day. Most of the stadium was emptying out. It's just tough to ask people to come to these games and spend their whole day sitting out there in that and then watching the product on the field. I mean, it's just tough. But financially, there's a lot that the fans can do to help move this program forward. It might not be sitting in the seats, but there's a lot that the program can do, that the fans can do to move the program forward because come December, it's game on for Mississippi State, and they better kill it in the portal. And you're having to convince guys that know about this roster and they know that this is a rebuild. You're having to convince guys that have 1 year left to come here and play. And that's going to be a difficult task. The one way that Mississippi State can do that is by spending a lot of money. And they're going to have to do that this offseason. And we'll see exactly what happens for Jeff Levy. Anthony, I just hope Van Buren doesn't take a bunch of unnecessary hits. He needs to gain some muscle weight. Yeah, they need to be really careful with him because you can't get down to 1 scholarship quarterback. Titans fan, I think my biggest fear is Hutzler not being fired at the end of the season. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just hard to imagine. Sorry. Unless we see some major changes on the defense, it's hard to imagine this defense getting much better. And they have some massive flaws with the scheme. And the scheme is just so bad. And the players are confused. Like, at one point against Arizona State, I said it's a scheme. Against Toledo, I said it was the players. Now it's both, but I think that the scheme definitely put Mississippi State in handcuffs the other day. We've all seen the videos of one side just stacked up with Florida offensive linemen. The other side, Mississippi State had put their defensive linemen on, and you're just like, and they're running the opposite side. It was crazy. It was hard to watch, and it was hard to watch live. But whenever you see it broken down like that, it's just I can't believe that Mississippi State was that off with what they were doing with their alignments. So that's incredibly concerning. And if this defense remains this bad, there's no way that you can bring Coleman Hutzler back for another year. You can't put yourself in that position again next year. Anthony, I've heard y'all and Charlie say that NIL is pretty competitive. Do you think State may need to change the philosophy of using it? I don't really know what that philosophy is because it kind of differs. They were willing to spend a lot of money on the baseball transfer portal class last couple of years, and they weren't able to get players. And the same can be said for defensively, and they did in on the offensive side, but defensively for Mississippi State in football, they did the same thing. They spent some good money in basketball. They're competitive. I think that they've actually had a good philosophy with it. Is a lot of it's just been players don't want to come here in some situations. With football, let's be real. The transfer portal opens at a certain time, but a lot of where players go out of the transfer portal is worked out before they even enter. And that's just the nature of the beast. Guys just end up where they're supposed to end up. Some of them have already been talking to them, so the relationships are there. You're building your transfer portal class in late November a lot of times. And I think what happened to Mississippi State, when Levy was here, and I'm not saying State did that on offense. When Levy came in, he had something to sell. He was a successful offensive coordinator at multiple schools. He had something to sell. This defensive staff has nothing to sell. They had nothing to sell. That's why you saw them go after familiar faces, guys from Memphis. They went after some Ohio State guys, but couldn't get them. So I'm interested to see what happens in the offseason with the transfer portal and what Mississippi State does there. Tom T, how did Jaden Wally disappear? I don't know what's going on with Jaden. He played the other day. He was playing in the ball game, so I don't really know. He's been injured a good bit. That has something to do with it. But I don't know what his situation is. He seems happy, so that's a plus. DJ Cooge, what's going on, man? Good to see you the other day. I appreciate what DJ Cujo's bringing to the atmosphere at Davis Wade. Jacob Rochelle is Shapen / transfer the projected quarterback for 2025, or do they turn to Van Buren next year if he shows promise? I think it's Shapen Van Buren for sure, or Parson, whichever one. And if things go badly with Van Buren and you don't feel great about Shapen, you're probably going out and you try to find another transfer portal guy. As it stands right now, I would say Mississippi State sticks with what they have, and they go after another position group that's really going to move the needle for them on the defensive side and maybe offensive line. Bryce, what's up with all the injuries? This has been a common thing in the past couple of years. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's strength and conditioning, bad luck. I know one thing, when things are going bad at Mississippi State, it just seems like it just completely unravels. Bailey Doolittle, history's on our side. Archie, Peyton, and Eli all lost or tied their first game against Mississippi State. Well, there you go. The more you know. I was at Peyton and Eli's games. Obviously, I was not born for Archie. Sanja, Rajput. I apologize if I didn't get that right. Freshman quarterback's going to do well if Levy commits to the run game. Yeah, and that's one thing that he said today was like they need to be able to run the football, and that's 100% correct. They're going to have to be able to run the football. You cannot put everything on his shoulders in this game. It's going to have to be a situation where the running game alleviates some of that pressure off of him and allows him to play a little more free. And you don't got guys stacking the box or sending the house. I expect Texas to try to pop him. I want. I'm expecting them to bring not bring the house, but bring a lot of blitzing and pinning their ears back and trying to get after him to make sure he feels it. This is going to be his first start on the road in the SEC. They're going to try to rattle him. Hell State fan, the loudness of it is a more enjoyable experience. Talking about at State, it's a more enjoyable experience for me to stay in home in Tennessee and listen to the broadcast. I'd rather hear the band. Yeah, but I mean that's just part of it now, man. I mean this is a new era. You gotta have the flash. You gotta add something to it. It's not just about the band anymore. But they got to make it not so loud where it's just the speakers are blowing and more. We need more clarity. There's got to be more clarity within the stadium, and I don't know what that entails. I'm not a sound system guy, but maybe more speakers throughout the stadium or something like that. I don't know what that is, but you can't hear anything. It's just noise. And that's kind of the problem right now. And it's not the DJ's fault. It's the speaker system's fault, and the fact that Mississippi State hasn't addressed this. And right now they just have this quick fix, putting a Band-Aid on it, and it's not even good. I can't hear anything, so it hasn't helped anything above the press box or at the press box area. And the people around the speakers say it's too loud. So you need an expert to get in here, get you a great sound system, and make this a more enjoyable experience. Because right now, it's one of the worst stadiums in the SEC, and it's sad to say that, but that's where Mississippi State has gotten to from a game day, stadium standpoint. They've got to address it, and I understand the whole revenue sharing thing, and that's coming, but it's like this is a necessity. It needs to be addressed. El Hannah, can you please explain how Ole Miss has so much more money for NIL and upgraded facilities and State does, and we are both located in one of the poorest states in America? First and foremost, Ole Miss and its fan base went all in. They realized that this is a new era of football and college sports, and you can now give money freely to recruits, and it's legal. And they embrace that. Mississippi State fans have not. No offense, but in comparison, State fans and Ole Miss fans have gone separate ways on it. I think it's gotten a lot better, but from the start, Ole Miss fans hit this hard and realized they have a chance to compete for a national championship this year, and they're going to be in the college football playoff. Barring something going badly for them down the stretch, and they went all in on it. And I would say probably a lot of the big money came from people that are out of state. I don't think it's just like their local fans uh, are given this, and it's like the same thing at Mississippi State. There's a lot of money's been coming in from people that are from Texas or other places. Uh, they just happen to have probably a lot more money in those big boosters, or maybe a lot more big boosters than Mississippi State does. I don't know exactly where that money's coming from or how much they've raised, but I do know that their fan base is much more accepting of the NIL transfer portal era than Mississippi State has been. From the start, State fans talked about how they didn't like this. They weren't going to give money to recruits, stuff like that. Again, no offense, guys, but that's what happened. That happened on message boards, social media. They had a delay in getting a collective set up. Mississippi State just did not embrace this in the same way that Ole Miss did. That's why things are, in many respects, the way that they are right now. But it's not totally an NIL issue either for Mississippi State. I think there's a lot of other things that have gone into it, and I've spoke plenty about that. There's been a whole lot of unrest within this athletic department, specifically in the football program, that is having to be, gutted at this point, and that's a tough thing to come back from. But the only way out of it's NIL, folks. I mean, there's other things that they need to do within the whole spectrum of it all, but you're not going to do it without NIL. Sanjay, we got so many pro players with big paydays. They should be able to raise millions in NIL from former alumni players. I think they're working on that for sure with several guys. I expect something. It wouldn't shock me to see Dak Prescott come out and do something for the football program at some point. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's going to be NIL related or in the way of a facility or whatever, but I think that's coming at some point. Hell State fan, congrats to soccer team beating number 11 Texas and off to a 2-0 start in SEC play. Yeah, for sure. Soccer team is outstanding. James Armstrong, in my opinion, is the best coach on campus. What he's doing at Mississippi State in soccer is akin in a lot of ways to what Vic Schaefer did at Mississippi State women's basketball, but maybe even more so because he took that program from they had done absolutely nothing before he got here. And now they are, going to be probably a top 15 team this week. Had a historic season last year. This season looks to be even better. It's a great roster, one of the best defensive teams in the entire country. If you look at what they've done, they've only allowed 2 goals the entire year. I believe I'm right on that. And both of those came against Wake Forest, the team they lost to. So if you aren't supporting the soccer team, give them a shot. That team is really fun. And James Armstrong is doing an unbelievable job. That was a great hire. And they get overlooked because people just don't – I don't watch a lot of soccer. People don't pay attention to soccer like they do the big 3 sports. But they deserve your attention because they're fun to watch. They're off to 2-0 start, and I think this is going to be a really competitive team in the SEC this year. And what they do on the defensive end is really impressive. Hill State fan also says King Grace is a huge commitment to the Hoops team. Yeah. The funny thing about that, I talked to Paul Jones about it. Paul is our resident men's basketball guy, and if you aren't already, the only place you can get routine Mississippi State basketball recruiting news and the best of it is at On 3 at Maroon and White Daily, and that's men's and women's basketball. We have the beat on lock when it comes to basketball. If you're a basketball fan, you're not over there, you got to come because that's where the best basketball fans in Mississippi State's fan base are, and it's going to get really exciting in the next couple of months. I'm pumped about what's on the way. So come join us over there and check out the news that we got in terms of basketball team and recruiting news. But that was a big one. Even Paul was kind of not really stunned, but that was a little bit of a surprise. And I think Mississippi State was a little surprised by it because this is a guy that's played his cards close to the vest. He hadn't really talked a lot about his his favorites. He hadn't even told some of the teams, where they stand. And the coaching staff at Mississippi State did not even know where he was going until he called them that night, and then shortly after announced his commitment. That's a huge commitment. The biggest commitment of Chris Jan's tenure here as far as high school recruiting is concerned. And I think that this recruiting class is easily going to be his best. It's going to end up being a really good one. So Chris Jans has got that thing rolling. And people talk about Mississippi State's poor in NIL or whatever. They don't have the team that they have right now without what they're doing in NIL. And it's been twofold. It's been success on the court, support from the fans in the stands, and NIL. And now you're seeing what a healthy program looks like that's also getting support from the fan base in terms of NIL. You start getting Chris Jans a little bit of success, get him some players in here. You're going to keep him around for a long time, in my opinion. If you do that, you're going to be able to pay him, and Mississippi State is going to be thriving in men's basketball. So I'm really excited about where the direction of that program and where things are headed. And King Grace continues that trend upwards. Hell State fan, keeping the positive vibes going. I like that. Congrats to Jake Mangum for winning the batting title for his league. Agree. That was a big time deal. I have no idea why they're wasting him in minor league ball. Some people tried to explain to me before the season or at the start of the season that he was that he couldn't come up there and play, and lack of power, and he had guys ahead of him. Their outfielders stink. I mean, I'm just going to be completely honest with you. There's no reason for him not to get a shot to see what he can do up there, because the dude just, I don't care what level he's been on, started in high school, came to the SEC, was the SEC batting champion in year one, became the all-time hits leader in the SEC, has done nothing but hit since he's been in the minor leagues, and now in AAA was one of the best hitters in the entire AAA league. So, I don't know what's happening here, but that's a guy I would want in my locker room. I know that much. I don't know what he's going to hit on the next level. I don't know if he'll hit any home runs, but I know he's going to make my team better. I don't think there's any question about that. Sanjay says State's going to be able to run the ball in Texas. We hope. Texas is overrated. Again, we'll see. I don't think that, even if they're overrated, there's no faith that Mississippi State's going to stay in this game. I mean, Mississippi State just played a team that was about to fire its coach, and I still think that they will. And on top of that, their defense was god awful, and Mississippi State at times struggled to run the ball until later they started getting a rhythm. They struggled to get out of the gates against it. I have no faith, even if they're overrated. I have no faith State's going to stay in that game. Big mixed with all the running back injuries. Do you think you see Stonka or maybe Creed in the backfield? Yeah, they've actually been doing some of that. We saw Stonka in the backfield a little bit. We saw Kevin Coleman. They've already been running some of those formations, but we might see a little bit more. Wouldn't be a bad idea. Billy Ray, why don't they utilize Whitmore more? I have no clue. That's been an issue for the last two staffs, but two, I mean, he's battling with some good receivers in there too. I mean, it's just like, who do you pull out? Need to run more pro style offense. That's not Jeff Levy's bag. They were in pro style last year, and that was terrible. They still put up 28 points the other day and could have scored 2 more touchdowns. I just don't. The offense should be better, but this is the scheme. You got to run this scheme. This is their best chance. I don't think they can run a pro style offense with the personnel that they have. When they got into a rhythm the other day and they were running with tempo, they were fine. But I don't like pro style offense with this personnel, and I think Levy is better suited for this, anyways. Yeah, I don't like that idea at all. Yeah, I'm having to. Sandra, you got to calm down a little bit. It's just like it's so much. I'm having to scroll through. Mark Gaming TV, what do you predict will be the score this weekend? Ugh. I don't know. 63 to 17. I don't know. I'm not looking forward to it. As a 40 plus year fan of MSU, I'm having a difficult time remembering defense as bad as this one. There's not been one as far as talent and scheme. There has not been one this bad, and it's it's the games change, so it's kind of hard to compare it to other places. There's been some bad ones from a schematic, and Ron Cooper's was really bad. They had some players on it. Peter Sermon's was really bad. They had some players on it. This one's bad all the way around, and you're in the middle of a time where offenses are scoring a lot of points, are putting up big numbers. It's just the worst time to have a defense like this. State was known for having hard-nosed defense for years. What happened? Well, part of it was these changes that they've had, and I don't think that they developed players very well. I don't think they evaluated players very well. I hate to quit harping on this, but it's totally an issue. And if you dismiss that, then you're just missing the point. But that they the last couple of staffs just did not do a very good job stocking the cupboard. And I don't think that we talked about it, that these players have been developed like they should. You're seeing guys that are going in the ballgame now that haven't had playing time. The guys that are starting right now, they weren't prepared for this, most of them. At least not the ones that came from last year's team. So I think there's just a lot of things that's happened, and I don't think that the current defensive staff is really getting a whole lot of it out of it either. After years of having our defensive line and DBs go on to the NFL, this roster has no dudes that can disrupt an offense. Very few. They got to get some guys out there that can do that. Hunter Johnson, high school question. What are your thoughts on East Webster versus Calhoun City? I think it's going to be a good game. I'm going to be there Friday night. Really looking forward to it. And that's a game, that's a series that's been owned by Calhoun City, but East Webster has been close in a few games, and actually they won a game a couple years ago. It's a good measuring stick game for East Webster, who's in our Starkville Daily News area. So I'm looking forward to that. Calhoun City's been really good early too. Stringer Films, you're usually the most positive guy in here. And now you come in here and saying Mississippi State's going to have 100 points on Saturday. If you've given up, man, that's not good. Stephen Mills, what are the odds of MSU looking for a defensive coordinator? I think they're high. If this continues down this road, I don't think there's any way that you can run it back, like I said. Anthony Matt always says, I guess that's Matt White, spread is better at schools like State because they cannot get the players year in and year out to run a pro style. That's exactly right. State doesn't have – you can run a pro style offense in places like Bama and Georgia, places like that where you got the dudes at wide receiver on the outside or running back or offensive line. State just doesn't have those guys. This is a good offense for even this Mississippi State team to have because you're spreading the defense out. When you watch State's wide receivers, when they're running it, how Jeff Lebby really likes to run it, where those wide receivers are all the way at the hashes and they are almost on the sidelines. and you're able to really spread that defense out and you got numbers, that's when his offense is really humming. And then when you're able to run with tempo, which last week I thought when they were able to run with tempo, that offense was in good shape. That's what State needs. They got to be able to run a little smoke and mirrors every now and then, or be able to catch defenses off guard, or be able to wear them down a little bit and catch them out of position. That's the best chance Mississippi State has to score points. They tried to run that pro-style offense last year, and it was a disaster. So I think this is the best thing for them. And it was always going to take time. That was a thought that I had preseason, that it was going to take some time for this team to mesh, but the hope was Jeff Lebby's offense was going to be what it has been. But you're breaking in virtually 11 new starters, and now it is 11 new starters with Kevon Lee out, because I think he might have started a game or two. So now you have totally new offense, and you can't just expect that offense just to right off the bat be clicking. I think that's part of the reason why we saw the offensive line start to come together a little bit last week. This is game 4. We'll see if they have some more progress this week. But that's the nature of it, is you are breaking in a lot of new guys, and this offense is taking time for everybody to gel, and they're going to have to get some players in here too. I'm not making a ton of excuses for Lebby, but it's just the point of the matter. Big Mix live in Georgia, and all my friends and coworkers that are not State fans are shocked at how bad we are in defense. Yeah, this is not the Mississippi State way. And I don't want Mississippi State to be known as a defensive place. I mean, at this point, it's a lot cooler to have a fun, exciting offense, and that's how you win ball games. But defense is still important. You need to have a good defense too. And Mississippi State being steamrolled every week is not Mississippi State football. And it hasn't been Mississippi State football. St. J, I promise you don't want this team to run a pro-style offense. I promise you. And this isn't the air raid. This is a different offense. And I can't keep blaming the offense in totality. I mean, they scored 28 last week. They're scoring points. They showed some progress last week. I mean, it's not like what we saw last year. Anthony Dinkins and Travion was supposed to be our next dudes, but just ain't happening. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with those two. I mean, first of all, Dinkins, the way that Jeff Lebby talked after his injury was he was going to be back fairly soon, and we have not seen him for 3 straight games, and we'll see what the injury report says this week. But we haven't seen much from Travion Williams at all. So those are 2 guys that are talented enough to get in there and help Mississippi State, and we just aren't seeing it right now. Hey, Lebby was part of beating Texas last season. He was. He's done it before. Jackson, I live in Austin, and the "our coach died" excuse is starting to get old. I don't know how many people are really using that anymore, and it's not really. It's not just that. It's a lot of other things that have gone into it. But yeah, I think it is starting to wear out a little bit. I mean, this is year 2 after that's happened, but it did hurt Mississippi State. It set them back because you went from that to Zach Arnett, and that staff completely wrecked things. So it's just put Mississippi State into a hole that it's going to have to dig itself out of. All right. Well, with that, I mean, we've gone pretty long tonight, but I appreciate the conversation. We had a good night, over an hour. It's been a fun one. I know you guys are frustrated, but we'll get through this. And in another month and a half or so, there's going to be basketball, which is going to be exciting to talk about. We'll continue to do these, even if this team is absolutely dreadful, which I expect it to be. We'll continue to do these. We'll continue to do reactions after games. We're going to talk about what's going on. We might not spend a ton of time talking about certain things, but we will get on here, and I'll let you guys vent, and I'll vent, and we'll talk about whatever. So I hope you guys have enjoyed that. We went over 1,000 subscribers this past week. Really excited about that. Just in a few months of having this this channel, that's a really cool accomplishment. Something that that was my first goal, was getting this thing over 1,000, and then we'll go from there and we'll keep pushing. We got over 2,000 with my last channel, but we had to switch to this one, so it's been ground up kind of thing, and we're trying to get this thing better and better, up the production value, have some more things on here. We'll work on that as time goes, but I appreciate you guys doing this and being along for the ride and always supporting. I hope that you guys have some happier times moving forward. I would like to have some happier times too, but some good things coming for Mississippi State in the form of basketball and all that stuff too. If you missed anything on this chat, a reminder, when I end this, you'll be able to go back and watch it in full. If you want to watch the whole hour of it, knock yourself out. But it will be there to watch in its entirety in the archives. So you can do that. Subscribe to this channel if you don't already. Subscribe to Maroon and White Daily. Come see us. If you're ready for basketball, we are too. And we will gladly give you the scoop and the information that you want on that. We actually have some stories coming out this week on Mississippi State basketball. So I think that you guys need to come check that out. And I guess that's it. So with that, hope you guys have a great rest of the week. If you're going to Austin, be careful. Enjoy yourself the best that you possibly can. But other than that, we will catch you down the road.